to a new episode of For One of a Nail. As always, I'm your host, Robin, joined today by my co-host,
Chris.
Chris, wonderful. Great to have you back on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm
This
excited
is
to be
your
back.
third episode? That's actually gone out. We've recorded quite a few that never went to air.
Oh, wait. Do we not ever release the group ones?
We only released the first one, which I thought was a very good episode, but the other two,
Oh,
I've gone
that's
back and
right.
done that material with one-on-one people, but never released the full group episodes.
Yeah, that checks out. Those, yeah. I remember now.
They were a little tedious to get through.
Yeah.
I also cut down the material quite a bit on those.
Good call, I think.
Yeah. So this is your third one, right? We've done the first episode and then the Alexander Graham Bell episode. And now
Yes.
this. And to give everyone a little peek behind the curtain, you have no idea what we're going to be talking about today.
Literally no clue. I picked this topic probably like 2 months ago. Robin gave us like a list of things and we were like, yeah, I'll do that one and I'll do that one. I fully don't remember what it is anymore. I think it might be related to movies, but I don't know.
I mean, I always present my guests with the option of knowing where we're going to end up, if you'd like, or would you like it to remain a surprise as we go along?
I would like to know where we're...
Okay. The end of this is... Well, I'll tell you this title. This episode's going to be entitled The MCU.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, but spoiler alert, we don't spend much time with the actual MCU, so don't worry. This is not a podcast about those movies. It is instead a podcast about history and the weird way things are interrelated. So, how familiar are you with the cause of socialism in the United States circa 1910?
Not particularly.
Good. Okay. I mean, I know you're familiar with quite a few niche periods of history, so I was afraid you might have already known all the information I'm going to be presenting today. But it's good to know that you'll be coming in from a very, very unfamiliar position.
I would like to say I do not know much about niche periods in history. I hope that was sarcasm.
It was indeed sarcasm.
Awesome.
But you should have just like if someone says something nice about you, even if it's a bold-faced lie, you should just accept it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to misrepresent my character out in the world,
Darn.
you know? I don't want someone walking up to me on the street like, oh yeah, I heard you on For One of a Nail. Tell me about one of your niche history moments.
That's when you lie. You just pick something so niche that no one could ever call you on your bullshit.
Have you heard about the Great Beetle Revolution of 1930?
I'm really into late Han period pottery. But only the stuff produced in southern China. The northern China part I don't focus on. But
It's actually this one particular village.
you just keep going lower and lower until they stop being aware of what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this one guy named Lee.
Specifically this one summer.
Yeah, some really insane pottery. So, no, but we are going to be talking about one particular individual at the start here, and that is a Mr. John Jack Silas Reed. He was born on October 22nd, 1887, in his grandparents' mansion in Portland, Oregon.
Wow. Already starting off life in the high road.
Yeah.
Living the mansion life.
I've already let slip that we are going to end up talking about socialism, so how appropriate that we start in Portland. He was the son of wealthy members of Portland's upper class, his mom being the daughter of a wealthy industrialist. Jack was a sickly child and was constantly surrounded by nurses and servants. His mother even selected his playmates from among the children of other upper-class members of Portland society.
I mean, that just seems like it checks out for an upper-class member of Portland society to only let the child
True.
play with other upper-class members.
True. But imagine your mom, like, making your friends pass a credit check. Like, that's just weird.
Oh, yes, that is not something my mother ever did. But I can see how a very rich family might do that.
I'm surprised that your mother never had such high opinions of your friends like that. Only the best for my son. In school, Jack was evidently very bright, but did not get high marks as he found the school dry and tedious. Despite his poor performance up to that point, Jack was admitted to Harvard on his second try.
I mean, again, rich boy. This is in no way surprising.
Yeah. We're talking about a rich boy in the late 1800s. Well, I guess it would be 1905-ish. Yeah, he didn't have... he probably wasn't up against much competition. But
what, like, if you truly didn't learn anything in your formative years of school, what do you do when you get to Harvard? Like, I can't foresee that going over very well.
I'm sure his schooling was decent enough, but there was also just less things to know back then. There were less courses that you would need to take to can be considered a well-learned gentleman.
Fair enough.
And also school was a lot more like trade focused in a way, not in the sense of like a modern day trade school, but in the sense of like if you're going to be a writer, you don't really take math classes, and like you would now. In the way that there's now greater emphasis on being well-rounded in the materials you cover, whereas back in the day that would have been considered something mostly for the realm of academics, like people who wanted to do lifelong studies like that, or people who were so wealthy they could afford to be incredibly bored. While at Harvard, Jack threw himself into social activities. He joined the cheerleading team, the swimming team, and the dramatic club, served on the editorial boards of 2 different Harvard periodicals, the Lampoon and Harvard Monthly, and was president of the Harvard Glee Club.
Wow. Really blossomed in Harlem. In
Harvard. Yes. He also blossomed in Harlem. He took a summer off to go to around, and really, it was quite an elucidating time for him.
Harlem in the 1800s?
This would be early 1900s. He was born in 1887, so if we're saying he went to school probably around 17 years old, 1904-ish. Jack became friends with Walter Lippmann. He would later go on to introduce the concept of the Cold War and coin the term stereotype. Jack presided over meetings of the school socialist club despite not being a member himself.
Interesting.
Basically, he just let them use his sitting room and would be there to take notes. Jack attended meetings and said that the discussions there, and I'm quoting here, made me and many others realize that there was something going on in the dull outside world more thrilling than college activities, and turned our attention to the writings of men like H.G. Wells and Graham Wallas, wrenching us away from the Oscar Wildean dilettantism which had possessed undergraduate literateurs for generations. And this was when I realized that H.G. Wells was a massive socialist, which is pretty weird to find out.
This is something you're realizing, not, again, quoting from his writing.
Oh, yeah, no, end quote. But he's, yes. I had no idea up until I started doing research for this episode that he was a huge socialist.
I am not even super familiar with who H.G. Wells is.
H.G. Wells is best known for his science fiction. He wrote The Time Machine, and what else did he write? It was like it basically any Victorian era science fiction is either him or Jules Verne. So like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Journey to the Center of the Earth, The Time Machine, stuff like that. I think H.G. Wells really liked to base his stuff in fact and actual science, whereas Jules Verne was a little bit more fantastical with it and would take I think he did Journey to the Center of the Earth, which has no bearing in actual science, but
right.
They're both very famous authors. Okay. Jack graduated from Harvard in 1910 and moved to New York to become a journalist. While in Harvard, Reed had become friends with Lincoln Steffens, who was making a name for himself as a muckraker. Do you know what a muckraker is? Oh, yes. Anyone who went to my middle school knows what a muckraker is. It was a very big topic for some reason. It's like right in the middle of, usually like in AP, like in U.S. history class, it's right in the middle of the semester. And so it's one of the things people actually remember from it because it's going to be on the midterm. For those at home who don't know what a muckraker is, muckraker was a term for a journalist at the turn of the century who was considered very progressive and trying to stir up social progress against the wealthy and corrupt of society. I don't know if that's a very biased interpretation of what a muckraker is, but it's the definition I'm going with. Steffens thought Reed showed promise and got him a job at The American Magazine, where he quickly made a name for himself as a successful journalist and a poet with a radical bend. He joined the IWW, or the International Workers of the World, in 1913, and was further radicalized through witnessing the violent tactics used by strike breakers.
Strike breakers? Oh, like people who want to go break up strikes.
Yes, literally. They were brought in by big companies to literally go and beat up striking workers and force them to either break the strike or return to work, which I guess technically are the same thing, but they are technically distinct.
Damn.
Yeah. They're not good people. There's the list of absolutely shit people. It goes scabs. Scabs are people who work during a strike. Then it goes strike breakers, and then it goes Nazis. And that's my absolute bottom of the barrel. So.
Oh, I'm very glad that list was not in the other direction.
No, it was not.
It was initially. No. I'm like, wow, that's certainly a take.
Yes.
Did they ever consider hiring strike breakers?
Actually, they did. Generally, the striking workers would either turn to the mob or form basically rudimentary gangs themselves for protection. That's why the Teamsters Union, still a very powerful union, but basically the people who drive trucks, delivery men. They were basically owned by the mob in the 1950s and 60s because the mob had sort of come in to help them protect them against strikebreakers.
But I'm sure it's convenient for the mob to also have a shipping network.
Oh no, the mob wasn't like they weren't doing it out of some place of United Labor. They were doing it because there was quite a buck to be made in the shipping industry. Watch literally any Martin Scorsese film, and you'll learn quite a bit about how the Teamsters were used by the mob. Or really just the Irishmen or Goodfellas, both of them. It's a pretty big part there. But later in 1913, Jack was sent to cover the Mexican Revolution and traveled with the armies of both Pancho Villa and Venustiano Carranza. There's probably a trilled R in there, but I was never able to do that, so I'm just going to ignore it.
Fair enough.
Do you know what Pancho Villa's last words were?
No.
So Pancho Villa sort of retired to his hacienda. And was living life as a petite bourgeois, rich playboy, essentially. And one day he was driving home in his car when a bunch of men popped out of the woods and riddled it with machine guns, like literally he was Bonnie and Clyde.
Rip.
And the story goes that after the gunfire died down, a young boy ran up to the car to see if he was okay and found him as he was dying. And he was supposed to have said, "Don't let it in like this. Tell them I said something." And those are theoretically the last words of Pancho Villa.
That's incredible.
I love it.
Also, really bold of that boy to just run up to a car riddled with bullet holes.
I mean, it makes me think the story has to be apocryphal, but I also, maybe the gunmen didn't stick around. Like, it's not something you sort of wait around and see, like, oh, is he still moving? Is he still moving? Oh, no, you just get out of there. But his outstanding reporting got him national Jack Reed, not Pancho Villa. His outstanding reporting got him national acclaim as a war correspondent. His notoriety was even sufficient to allow him to interview President Wilson as a series of articles about the recent Ludlow Massacre, which was an instance where striking coal miners had set up a camp of tents near the worksite, and the governor called in the National Guard, who set up machine guns and just machine gunned into the tent village.
Oh my God.
Indiscriminately. Yeah, it's awful. Honestly, the atrocities committed by the police, strike breakers, and the U.S. government during the really big period of socialized labor in the United States in the early 1900s is sickening to learn about. But yeah, they would just straight up kill you. That's why if you ever hear somebody is from the Pinkertons, you should run, because the Pinkertons are bastards. They're actually right between strike breakers and Nazis on my shit list.
The shit list is ever growing, of course.
Of course. That's not an exhaustive catalog of the people who are on my shit list. I just thought it was the only ones pertinent to the discussion.
Fair enough.
Yes. On August 14th, 1914, Reed set sail for Europe to be a correspondent on the rapidly growing conflict that had just broken out. which we would later call the Great War or World War I.
Mm-hmm.
In a piece published a month later in a socialist paper, Reed wrote, "We, who are socialists, must hope, we may even expect, that out of this horror of bloodshed and dire destruction will come far-reaching social changes, and a long step forward towards our goal of peace among men. But we must not be duped by this editorial bunkum about liberalism going forth to a holy war against tyranny. This is not our war." End quote. He was deeply disappointed by the sudden evaporation of international class solidarity that occurred when the war broke out. Basically, up prior to the war, you had all these major socialist parties in like France, Germany, Russia, to a lesser extent, England, and they had all, like, as part of their platforms, called for peace amongst men and an end to capitalist wars. But then the war breaks out, and the government comes to your door if you're the head of like the Socialist Party of Germany, and it's like, "Hey, war's coming, and if you tell people to fight against it, we're gonna ban your party and throw you in jail." And so, like, all the socialist parties lined up behind their national war efforts instead of having any idea of international class solidarity, which is really disappointing.
I mean, what are you going to have them do at that point?
Well, I mean, you have people like Lenin, who was literally during that time in exile from Russia for trying to lead a revolution against the government already, and he refused to aid in the war effort at all. He routinely called for the socialists of Russia to fight against the war effort. And he lost quite a bit of support doing it, but at the end, he took over Russia. So
he got there eventually. As much as you fault the man for so many things, I know you personally very much hate Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, but he was at least pro-peace quite a bit. In 1915, while traveling through Eastern Europe, Jack was arrested and accused of being a spy, having to be saved by the American ambassador. I believe it was in Bulgaria, who had recently joined the war on the side of the Central Powers, which was Germany's side. Right.
During the trip, he even tried to sneak into Constantinople to see the Battle of Gallipoli. Are you familiar with the Battle of Gallipoli?
I am not.
It was this effort Winston Churchill undertook as the First Lord of the Admiralty during the war to try to basically invade Turkey and force them out of the war. But the problem was he came up with the idea, and then the Navy just sat outside of the landing zone for like 3 months getting ready, which gave the Turks plenty of time to set up defenses, and it was a huge bloodbath. It's really one of the darkest periods in British and especially Australian military history, as they were the ones who did most of the fighting.
That seems like a bit of a blunder on their part. Seems like,
Yeah.
Don't sit outside your enemy's house with a gun and expect them not to do anything.
Yeah. There's also a lot of debate whether the plan would have even worked in the first place, even if they actually had the element of surprise like Churchill wanted. And Churchill it was a black mark. He basically he resigned and he had to leave politics for like a few years before he could come back and eventually become prime minister. But
damn.
Yeah, he never forgot about it. He was always ashamed of it. But so Reed was tried to be present for that. Also, do note that on this podcast, it is called Constantinople, not Istanbul. I'm sorry. The Byzantine Empire will forever reign in my heart.
You're just invalidating the name of a whole country?
Well, no, only a city. Turkey still exists, and they don't even have their capital there. Istanbul is not the capital of Turkey. Ankara is the capital of Turkey. But so after the tour of Eastern Europe, Reed returned to Portland, where he met Louise Bryant, and the two fell in love. The couple moved to Provincetown, Massachusetts, where they shared their home with their friend and lover, Eugene O'Neill. Eugene O'Neill is a noted playwright. Reed and Bryant married in November of 1916. And they were very much socially liberal, and so that's why they had this sort of open marriage experiment, which was surprisingly popular amongst socialists at the turn of the century like that. It was kind of a leftover from the sort of utopian ideals of early Americans. But basically, after the Revolutionary War, there was this idea that, oh, now we have utopia. We can build a utopia here in the New World, free of the proclivities of the old order. And so you had all these utopian experiments. And then out of that, one thing that was also popular in the later half of the century was the free love movement. And so they kind of blended together in the United States, and you see a lot of it amongst the more socially progressive sect. Yes. While in the U.S., Reed had a harder time getting things published, and when the U.S. joined the war, he found his articles and writings banned and his career ruined.
Oh, that's a turn.
Yeah, well, he refused to help with the war effort, and Wilson passed the Alien and Sedition Acts, which made it a crime to speak out against the war effort. Eugene Debs, the perennial candidate for president for the Socialist Party, was in prison for breaking the Alien Sedition Acts during the campaigns of 1916. No, it was 1918, I think. And he got a sizable number of votes for being a candidate in prison.
Wait, like the election was happening while he was in prison, and he still got a bunch of votes? Wild.
Yeah, I think he's done the best out of any candidate to run while in prison, which happens surprisingly often.
Specifically for the Socialist Party, or
no, just in general. Oh, no, you mean like the surprise? It just happens in general. I don't think socialists are any more likely. I guess probably statistics-wise they are more likely just because of Eugene Debs. But no, that is actually fairly common for people to run for office from prison.
That's wild. I've literally never heard of that before. I thought you couldn't. Well, I guess it depends on the office. You can't run for presidency if you are.
Yes, you can.
Really?
Yep. The only requirement for running for the office of president is that you were born and naturalized in the United States, and that you are currently a U.S. citizen, and you've reached the age of, I believe, 36. If you meet all those criteria, then you can run. Felons can't vote. Felons can't vote, but that doesn't mean that you can't run for president.
I swear I've heard the opposite before. That's crazy. Makes sense.
You also, they're kind of play it fast and loose with the whole requirement that you even be born in the United States. For example, John McCain was born in Canada. No, I'm sorry. He was born in the Panama Canal Zone. Yes. But then again, no one ever asked for his birth certificate. So
also checks out.
In August of 1917, Reed and Bryant set sail for Russia to report on the new government that had arisen since the abdication of the Tsar. This was in that weird period where the Tsar had abdicated in favor of liberal democratic government, but before the Bolsheviks took over and established a socialist government.
Gotcha.
The couple arrived in Petrograd in early September, only a few days after General Lavr, L-A-V-R, if you can figure out how to pronounce that, be my guest. Kornilov attempted to coup the government.
Seems like, wait, a few days before or after?
Just after.
They missed the scoop.
Petrograd was the capital of Russia at the time. Petrograd was the capital of the government at the time, and so you had a weird system of dual power in Russia, where there was the provisional government, led by people like Alexander Kerensky and the other names escape me right now, but Alexander Kerensky. And then you had the Soviet, the Petrograd Soviet, which was led by people like, at this time, Vladimir Lenin and what's his name? Leon Trotsky and others. And so when Kornilov was marching on Petrograd, Kerensky turned around and asked the Petrograd Soviet to protect the capital and the provisional government, and armed them, which really made them the much more legitimate organ of governmental power in Russia. So, yes. Anyways, that's all unnecessary. regardless, Reed was present in Petrograd for the October Revolution, even being there for the fall of the Winter Palace, which is where the provisional government was based out of. The October Revolution was when the Petrograd Soviet just decided to do away with the provisional government and overthrew it, which started the Russian Civil War.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Honestly, this is a fascinating time period. If you want a podcast that's more about this period in specific, you could check out Revolutions, which is doing its final season about the Russian Revolution. And I think they're on episode like 85 or something. And the provisional government's just been established. It's really interesting. Very in-depth podcast.
Wait, 85 in this season?
Yes. 85 episodes in this season.
Damn, how long are the episodes?
About 30 minutes.
Damn.
Yeah, no, it's exhaustive. He spends like the first 20 episodes just talking about the development of Russian socialism prior to the abolition of the serfs, which happened in like 1870. It's crazy. Honestly, it's really good. I know I'm a huge nerd for liking it, but it's really good history if you're interested at all. So Reed was an immediate supporter of the new revolutionary socialist regime and found work at the People's Commissariat for Foreign Affairs as a translator. After the dissolution of the Constituent Assembly by Lenin, Reed took up arms with a patrol of Red Guards to defend the Foreign Office against counter-revolutionary attack, and was a speaker at the opening of the Third Congress of Soviets. That's a lot, basically to say that the Bolsheviks, during the Civil War, tried to hold an election to solidify their control on power. But a lot of more moderate socialist parties won the majority of the vote. People like the Mensheviks and left SRs and other people that weren't Bolsheviks. And so Lenin suspended the assembly and ruled as a dictator because he didn't like the outcome of the election.
As a dictator would do.
Yeah, I have my problems with Lenin. He had some good ideas and some bad ideas, but regardless, Reed returned to the United States in January of 1918 to campaign for the fledgling revolution and was immediately apprehended by federal authorities. Throughout his time in the U.S., he was attacked by the government and by those within American socialism that did not support the Russian Revolution. Yes. Do you know who that didn't include, though? Helen Keller.
Helen Keller?
Yeah, the noted blind, deaf advocate. She was a staunch socialist later in life, and she was a strong supporter of the Russian Revolution. Yes. Reed returned to Russia in October of 1918 to try and drum up support for socialism in the United States. He would never again return to the U.S.
I mean, checks out. Come back, and you're just attacked left and right.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'd come back either.
Yeah. Also, at this time, the U.S. government had taken this as an opportunity to get rid of some of their socialists. And so a lot of noted socialists like Emma Goldman were shipped over to Russia, exiled essentially by the U.S. government just to get them out of the country.
They can just... Wait, was Emma a U.S. citizen?
Yes.
That was exiled
She's actually buried here in Chicago. Yeah.
Wild. I did not know they could just exile you to other countries.
Yes. In fact, the government used to be able to do quite a few things if you were a socialist. For example, being a member of a communist party meant that you couldn't get a visa to enter the United States or you couldn't get a green card. That's what it was. I think it might still be part of the immigration test, is like if you're a member of a socialist or communist party, they ask you about it.
That clearly didn't stop them from poaching Nazi scientists later, but...
Reed became an influential member of the growing group of radical American expats that had been exiled from the U.S. after the revolution became entrenched, like I said. In September of 1920, Reed fell ill with spotted typhus. Medicine necessary to treat the disease was not available in Russia, and no new supplies could be brought in due to an Allied blockade. This was after World War I, and the Allies were intervening on the side of the White Army, the White Russians. They were the remains of the provisional government that were opposed to the socialists. They were a mixture of neo-fascists, liberals, and monarchists that came together to fight the Red Armies. In fact, the United States landed troops in Russia at this time period.
United
States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, not Germany, and Japan all at one point occupied parts of Russia.
Wild.
Yeah, it's very little talked about. But so he couldn't get the supplies, the medicine for his disease. And Reed died in his wife's arms in Moscow on October 17th, 1920.
R.I.P.
Yes. R.I.P. to a real one.
Truly don't know how this is going to link to the MCU.
You'll see. He was buried at the Kremlin Wall necropolis, one of only 3 Americans to obtain that honor. His remains are interred alongside those of Vladimir Lenin, Maxim Gorky, who's a famous socialist author, Charles Ruthenberg, the founder of the Communist Party USA, Nadezhda Krupskaya, who was Lenin's wife and a noted socialist thinker in her own right, Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space.
I thought that name was familiar.
Yes, Yuri Gagarin. He died tragically in a car accident, while testing out a brand new type of fighter jet a few years after he returned. Basically, the entire high command of the Red Army during World War II, including Zhukov, Konev, Rokossovsky, Timoshenko, and Vasilevsky, Stalin, Brezhnev, Andropov, and Chernenko, who were the last of the leaders of the USSR before what's his name? Who was the last leader of the USSR? I'm completely blanking on it right now.
As always, I'm not the person to ask.
Gorbachev. Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. Yeah. Do you know he's still alive?
Isn't Gorbachev still alive?
Gorbachev is still alive. He has a website and stuff. You can go on it where he talks about modern, the issues of the modern day. It's crazy to think he's still around.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't really have a time reference for when...
He was premier of the Soviet Union in the late 80s, early 90s. He was premier of the Soviet Union when it dissolved.
Yeah, that checks out then.
Yeah. Also, he was noted at the time for being very young for the position, mostly because of how old the previous guys had been. But still, it's crazy to think he's still around. Him and Henry Kissinger are still around. And I'll be equally happy when both of them are dead. Today, Jack Reed is best remembered for his book 10 Days That Shook the World, which details his experiences in the October Revolution. It's actually a very good read. I highly recommend anyone who wants to pick it up. But from Jack Reed, we must jump forward 17 years from the date of his death to Mr. Henry Warren Beatty. Are you familiar at all with this man?
The name maybe sounds familiar.
Now, it's B-A-T-T-Y, so I've definitely heard it pronounced, but I've heard it pronounced 500 million different ways. I'm going to say Beatty, but it might be Beatty. It might be Beatty. I don't care. It's Beatty. He was born on March 30th, 1937, in Richmond, Virginia, to 2 teachers. Henry grew up watching movies like The Philadelphia Story and Love Affair and watching shows like Texaco Star Theater. His older sister, Shirley MacLaine, remembers seeing him reading books by Eugene O'Neill and singing Al Jolson records. He was a star of his high school football team and even reportedly turned down 10 college football scholarships to study liberal arts at Northwestern University.
Wow.
Yes, he came here to Chicago. He left school after only 1 year to move to New York and study acting under Stella Adler, who was a very noted acting teacher of the time. Yes.
Athlete turned liberal arts.
Athlete turned liberal arts turned actor. What will he do next?
Do the liberal arts not count as does acting not count as the liberal
That's
arts?
usually considered the fine arts. Liberal arts are things like mathematics, literature, poetry, stuff like that.
Mathematics count as liberal arts?
Yep.
Wild.
Mathematics is also one of the sciences, which makes it confusing. But basically, if a liberal arts school is one that teaches basically what is considered a general curriculum. So they don't focus on the sciences or a trade or the arts. They teach broadly a lot of stuff. So humanities focus, and then you could totally get a math degree from a liberal arts school. Or a biology degree for that matter. It's not that hard. Biology. It's really simple. It's just, oh, look, a flower. Anyways.
Yes.
I just pissed off every biologist that listens to this, so no one. Beginning in 1957, Beatty started getting roles on television, and his career took off almost immediately. He had instant star power. In 1960, he appeared in the play A Loss of Roses on Broadway, which earned him a Tony nomination.
Wow.
Yes. It was his only ever appearance on Broadway, and he got a Tony. Yeah, some people piss me off sometimes. In 1961, he made his film debut as the lead in the film Splendor in the Grass, which was a huge success and garnered Beatty a Golden Globe Award for New Star of the Year actor.
Wow, just getting awards left and right.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had been going by. Like, he started out doing like little commercials and stuff and bit parts and like things like that. But he had a really quick rise. People looked at him and immediately knew that this guy is special. He's also still alive, so I should mention that up top. He would go on to become one of Hollywood's hottest new stars and made a name for himself as something of a playboy.
Okay.
Throughout his career, he would date, at differing lengths, Cher. Though she was only 16 at the time. He was 25.
Yeah.
Diane Keaton, Mary Tyler Moore, whilst she was living across the street from Diane Keaton, and at the same time, Beatty and Keaton were dating.
Oh, no. Like, was it like a group consensual thing, or?
No.
Oh.
No, he was just he was a philanderer. There's stories of, I think it was Diane Keaton looking out her window and seeing him and Mary Tyler Moore together in the house across the way. It's really unfortunate.
You figured they'd at least go somewhere. Like, don't stay on the block where you are within eyesight of your other partner.
This is why motels were invented, people.
Oh, is it?
Honestly, kind of. And I should also mention that I'm going to keep going through names. There's going to be a lot of famous people on this list. Most of these relationships did not last long. He got very tired of women very quickly. Madonna.
Wild.
Annette Bening. Diana Ross. Goldie Hawn. Raquel Welch. Raquel Welch actually said of the relationship, "It was just Warren. He's been with everyone. I think that everything that moves in a skirt, I think he's a famous Lothario." Barbara Streisand.
Oh my God.
Diane Sawyer. Jane Fonda. Joni Mitchell. Kate Jackson. He apparently called her after watching her in an episode of Charlie's Angels, and that is how their brief relationship started. He just saw her on TV, called her up, and was like, "Hey, you're hot. You want to go out?"
Oh my God.
Ugh, to be that successful and that attractive. Oh my God. Bridget Bardot, Faye Dunaway, and more, including rumored flings with Jackie Kennedy and Princess Margaret.
Okay.
Jackie Kennedy was JFK's wife.
No, right.
Yes. Though he was dead by the time.
Okay.
Yes, no.
I was like, that's absolutely wild.
Though that couple's marriage was notably non-monogamous. They routinely took lovers, both of them. In fact, you know the Anwar High Dam in Egypt, the dam on the Nile River? Well, there's a dam on the Nile River that's quite famous.
No, right, yes.
That the United States helped build. And the idea was suggested to Jackie Kennedy by the head of Fiat, the Italian car manufacturing company, while they were lovers during JFK's presidency.
Absolutely wild.
Yes. But JFK got back. He routinely went skinny dipping with the White House secretary pool, and he was rumored to have had sex with Marilyn Monroe while in office.
This is all news to me.
Oh, yes. In fact, there's a story that when his brother, Bobby Kennedy, got married to his wife, they had a recording of the wedding. Like, the filmographer came in and recorded it. And it was picked up. They picked up audio of JFK and Robert having a conversation where JFK told him that it's okay to cheat on your wife.
Oh.
Just a little bit of brotherly advice. So,
I mean, JFK, you gotta really. I mean, for them it was consensual, but like phrasing.
Actually, the story it goes back and forth as to how much of an agreement this was between the Kennedys. It's kind of up in the air because obviously he's dead, and she's not talking about it because she's also dead, and she wouldn't have talked about it while she was alive. So. No one quite knows how consensual it was. Regardless. And do you know who Princess Margaret is?
Vaguely.
She's very big in the UK. If you've ever watched The Crown, you know her. She is Queen Elizabeth's younger sister.
Oh, yes.
Who is known for her volcanic romances.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it that way. In 1967, Beatty decided to start working behind the camera as well as in front of it. He produced and acted in Bonnie and Clyde, which he chose, with which he chose the writers, director, and most of the actors, and oversaw the script and the delivery of the film. He very quickly developed a reputation as, I'm just going to do everything, you can put your name on it if you'd like, kind of thing. The film was a massive critical and commercial success, earning 10 Oscar nominations and 7 Golden Globes, and earning Beatty $6 million.
Damn.
Yes, in 1967 money.
Which was a lot then.
Oh, it's significant. One movie columnist said at the time, quoting, "Mr. Beatty's career has had all the hallmarks of the conventional Hollywood golden boy. Ingratiating good looks, disarming youthfulness, a delight in the social life, and no apparently strong feelings about his craft. This image has now been strikingly shattered with his emergence as a vividly individual actor and as a highly imaginative producer in the gangster ballad Bonnie and Clyde. At 28, the image of Warren Beatty, fun-loving playboy, is dead. Warren Beatty, a man of cinema, is born."
He was 28 years old when he did this?
I know, right? Fuck him.
Listen,
honestly, fuck him.
Save success for other people. Stop hogging it all. Sprinkle a little bit on our podcasts, please.
Yes, Mr. Beatty, please. We'd love to have you on, even though I called you a philanderer earlier, but you were. Come on, don't admit it. Drug-fueled philanderer, come on. But come on the podcast and defend yourself. That'd be great. In the 1972 presidential election, Beatty organized a series of concerts to promote the McGovern presidential campaign, which pulled in massive stars on a scale unprecedented in U.S. politics up to that point. And as you know, President McGovern won that election in a landslide thanks to Warren Beatty's support. No, I'm not lying. Not Warren McGovern. McGovern was defeated in the biggest landslide in Electoral College history.
I fully don't know who this man is, so I was just taking your word for it.
He was the 1972 Democratic candidate for president. One notable thing from his campaign, he announced his vice presidential candidate, and then like a week later, it was revealed that that man had previously had a nervous breakdown, checked himself into an asylum where he received electroshock therapy, and McGovern had to kick him off the ticket.
Damn. Not staying loyal.
Oh, no. He actually tried to keep him on, but it was political suicide at that point to do it. He should have gotten rid of him immediately when it came out, but he tried to keep him around for a bit, which is the good person thing to do, but is not a good way to run a campaign, especially not in 1972.
Right.
But McGovern would go on to suffer one of the largest presidential defeats in U.S. history at the hands of Richard Nixon, but Beatty's formula for the political concert would continue. In 1975, Beatty would produce, co-write, and star in Shampoo, which takes place at the night of the 1972 election, earned 4 Oscar and 5 Golden Globe nominations, and is one of the few movies to have licensed Beatles music in it. Because it was made before the rights had reverted back to the Beatles themselves. So now, like, if you want to use like "Here Comes the Sun" in a movie, it costs like $500,000.
Oh my God.
But at the time, they managed to get them at a pretty reasonable rate. Yeah. In 1981, Beatty directed, produced, wrote, and starred in the film Reds, about the life of John Reed. Beatty snagged an Oscar for Best Director, and the film only lost Best Picture to Chariots of Fire. Chariots of Fire is the story, is the movie where, you ever seen that thing where it's slow motion, people running on a beach to the music that goes da 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 da?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Chariots of Fire.
Oh.
Is
Baywatch a thing?
Baywatch is a thing. It's not that. That's a different thing. That's people in swimsuits running in slow motion down the beach to rock music. Okay. Yes.
Oh, wait. Sorry. You just said running in slow motion. What? I thought you said running on the beach before.
No, Chariots of... Well, actually, that scene is on the beach in slow motion. But Chariots of Fire is about a marathon runner, not about Pamela Anderson in a bikini.
Fair enough. I couldn't remember if Baywatch was like the meme name for something or if it was the actual...
No, it's the actual name of the show. They made it into a movie a little while back with Zac Efron and The Rock.
What?
Yeah, it was bad. You shouldn't watch it.
Oh, I do vaguely remember seeing like ads around where it's the two of them running on a beach. Or at least some of them running on a beach. Or it was a parody. I don't remember. I was not paying that hard.
I think it also had Alexandra Daddario in it, if I'm remembering correctly, and she's the girl who played Annabeth in the Percy Jackson films.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And another woman who I forget at the moment, which shows I remember the men, but not the women.
Wait, Percy Jackson films? Did they make multiple? I thought they only made the one.
Yeah, they made a second one. They did Sea of Monsters. It was bad. It's just as bad as the first one. No one saw it. Yeah, it's awful.
The first one was not good. Such potential.
It's such a good series. I think they're doing a mini series for it or something, like a show. I could be wrong. I think there's currently something underway though to try to do justice to the books.
I think it would do well with an animated series.
I don't think it needs to be animated. I think it could be done pretty well live action.
Perhaps.
I think the problem with doing it animated, in my opinion, is that part of the mystique, part of what's so great about Percy Jackson is seeing these myths transplanted into the modern day. So part of that for the film experience would be doing it live action because it allows the audience to become even more immersed in the world of the film. Whereas if you do it animated, disbelief has been suspended before the first frame, and which sort of takes you out of it and makes it feel a little bit more fantastical.
That's fair. All right, you swayed me. I'm down for a live action one too.
The film Reds, though, truly cemented Beatty as a competent director and got him enough clout to have his pick of studios and subjects for his next film. After the success of Reds, Beatty became focused on producing a film adaptation of the Dick Tracy comic strip. Are you familiar with the Dick Tracy comic strip?
No, but I see how this is starting to tie into the MCU.
Yes. Dick Tracy he's a private eye, fights the mob during Prohibition. It started in the 1930s, and I think it continued up until either the late 1900s or maybe even the modern day. I genuinely don't know. But it's literally like a newspaper comic strip. It's not like there's not much of an overarching story. But between 1981 and 1990, Beatty worked with multiple studios and producers to try and get the project off the ground. At one point, the film rights lapsed during a quiet period in between productions, and Beatty snatched them up for $3 million.
Jesus.
Disney, newly under the management of Jeffrey Katzenberg, noted asshat, and Michael Eisner, other noted asshat, agreed to make the film on the condition that any amount for production over $25 million would come out of Beatty's fee as director, producer, and star. During production, the film's budget would explode to $46.5 million.
Damn. What was his cut? Or what would have been his cut, I guess? Did he have to pay Disney?
I don't believe so. I don't know how much his cut was affected or what the eventual thing was. I just know this agreement was part of it. After marketing and distribution costs, Disney would spend $101 million estimated on the film.
Oh my God.
Yes. Prior to Dick Tracy, Disney had largely hired directors based on their record and given them relative autonomy, especially for live action fare. Like Disney focused very strongly on their animated stuff, but if you were doing a live action film, they'd had great success in the past by just letting directors do what they want. And Dick Tracy had a decent opening weekend, making $22.54 million, and was the third most popular film that weekend. This was not nearly enough for the absolute smash hit Disney was expecting and basically banking on. Critics laid into the film for being strong on style while weak on substance, and the film would end up only barely making back its budget over time with film rentals and DVD sales when those came along, which is a terrible thing for a film to be because it means it's a flop.
All right.
In a memo to the studio, good.
No, I was just saying R.I.P. He's had this huge career, and now it's not gone, but this movie really put a dent in it.
Yeah, it's. I honestly kind of like it. It's very strong on the style. It feels really interesting. The performances are really cheesy. The set design is really over the top. It really looks interesting and dynamic, but it's so clearly bloated and over the top and just doesn't really know what it wants to be doing that it just doesn't really work. Like, it's not, I don't think by any metric it's really a bad film, but it's definitely not a very good film. And it needed to be a great film in order to be as successful as Disney needed.
Right.
Also, this was the time period where Beatty was dating Madonna. And so, weirdly enough, Madonna plays the villain in the movie, one of the villains in the movie, instead of Beatty's love interest, which is really strange. But, yeah. In a memo to the studio, Katzenberg said, "We made demands on our time, talent, and treasury that, upon reflection, may not have been worth it." After the failure of Dick Tracy, Disney decided to move away from the auteur style of filmmaking that they had previously employed and towards a more studio-centric approach where the individual vision of the director is secondary to keeping a consistent style and through line. They wanted to be able to make consistent products that people could bank on, knowing that if it's a Disney film, it's going to be good and good for the family. This was much more in line with an older studio style from like the 1950s, where the basically directors just bounced from one project to another. That was quite the voice crack right there. The age of gambling on proven directors and their passion projects was over. This approach would later find massive success as the guiding principle of the MCU. And the subversion of individual directors' styles to keeping a consistent through line has been one of the big things that's allowed the MCU to feel like a consistent product. It's why a lot of people say, like, oh, I don't really like the MCU movies, but they don't necessarily say that about, like, oh, I don't really like all Warner Brothers movies. I just don't like the MCU because it has such a consistent tone. And so there's not really that much difference between, say, Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
I've never seen Ant-Man, so I could not say.
Ant-Man's pretty good. I like Ant-Man. In fact, Ant-Man's a prime example of this, where they brought in, originally to direct it, they brought in, oh God, what's his name? The guy who directed Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead and Baby Driver.
I'm really bad with directors. I know who you're talking about.
I hate myself for this. His new ones is like Last Night in Soho or something. Let's see, Shaun of the Dead director. I refuse to let this not be answered because I like this guy quite a bit. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright was brought in to do Ant-Man at first, but he wanted to do it as an Edgar Wright film with very much Edgar Wright's style and Edgar Wright's kind of humor and movies. And Disney kept putting restrictions on what he could and couldn't do to the point where he just backed out and they got somebody else to direct Ant-Man. And then Edgar Wright went off with what he wanted to do and made Baby Driver.
Huh.
Yeah, which is a really good film that is completely fucked up by the fact that like half of the main cast has now been Me Too'd.
Oh no.
Yeah, it stars Kevin Spacey and oh God, I hope I don't get his name wrong. Another guy who was Me Too'd. It's unfortunate, but it's a really good movie.
I think it was fresh. Yeah, it had to be freshman year because my one friend was still around. But I watched the first 15 minutes of that movie, and it was really good. But I fell asleep because it was like 2 a.m. and I just haven't gotten back to it yet.
I can't fall asleep while watching movies. I just can't. I've never been able to do it.
It depends. Generally, I can. Once I'm invested in a story, I am in. If it's a movie I've seen before, I can fall asleep to it. Or if it's a movie, or if I'm extremely tired, I can fall asleep to it.
Even if I've seen the movie like a million times, I can't fall asleep during it. I can be at a point where I get really tired and I turn the movie off or I pause it and go to sleep, but I've never just fallen asleep watching a movie. It's really, I'm almost kind of jealous about it, honestly. It sounds fun.
Fell asleep to Rogue One the other day. Woke up, was very confused, but it was a good little mini nap before.
Wait, had you never seen it before?
No. I've seen Rogue One before. Okay. That's why I was able to fall asleep. Yes. I knew the plot, so I wasn't overly concerned.
Now that I think about it, I think I've only not seen 2 of the MCU movies. Thor 2 and Iron Man 3. I've never seen either of those.
I think I've seen Iron Man 3. I've never seen Thor 2. I've never seen most of the Captain America movies.
Those are really good. Honestly, I like Captain America
maintenance.
1. I think it's an interesting idea. I think it's the second best of the original main, like before the Avengers came out. Like the original ones where they're just setting up the main cast. I think it's the best one of those. Second best. I think Iron Man's still the best of those. And then Captain America: The Winter Soldier is really good. I think it's one of the better Marvel films.
I think I've seen that one. Right, because that's when Iron Man and Captain America fight.
No, that's Civil War. That's the third Captain America movie. The second one is when they introduce Bucky.
Right. I thought... Yeah. They had an initial fight at the end of that movie.
No, they don't. Iron Man isn't in Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Are you sure? Yeah, listen, yep. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, because they're very similar because in Civil War, Zemo uses Bucky, the fact that Bucky killed Tony Stark's parents in order to get them to fight.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was 2. I forgot what happened in 3. Captain America movies, I've never seen much of. I think I saw like part of the first one in like my AP Bio class when my teacher was out.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I think part of that for me is I just really like period films, and World War II is a fun time period. So, but yeah, that's the story of how we got to the MCU from Jack Reed. If we didn't have that plucky little socialist willing to die for the cause of international labor, then we would never have gotten to the MCU.
Wait, did Disney own... Disney didn't own Marvel by the time the first Iron Man movie came around, right?
No, they did.
They did?
Yeah, they owned the rights to make Marvel films. They didn't own everything. They only recently got everything when they bought Fox. But they did have the rights to the bulk of it. That's why they did the Avengers and not like a more established property like Fantastic Four or Spider-Man, because those had already been done. Those were owned by different companies, notably Sony. And the X-Men movies, which would have been the other big option to do for Marvel properties, was owned by Fox. And so they had to do the Avengers, and then here we are.
The X-Men are going to be coming into the Avengers soon, no? Or at least the MCU?
Disney owns the rights to the X-Men now, and they would be stupid not to use it. That and Fantastic Four as well. They already brought in Spider-Man and have shown that they're able to do that. So, and now with the new Spider-Man movie, it looks like they're going to go back and try to canonize it to some degree, the old Spider-Man movies, which is fun.
Cool.
Yeah. But going forward, it remains to be seen how they're going to bring the X-Men in. But that's probably going to be the next big arc. I think Kang the Conqueror is currently set up as like the next big villain of the MCU, but I'm really interested if the X-Men play a role in that.
I don't know much about Kang.
Kang the Conqueror is interesting. At least this version appears to be where he is a time traveler, like a man who learned the existence.
Yes, that's right. That's splitting off of Loki.
Yes, Loki introduced him, but that actor's been retained for further films. And you finished Loki, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Loki's been set up as the second season at least of Loki, but Kang will probably show up in the new Spider-Man movie and stuff like that. So, should be fun.
That means that Loki's, or at least a version of Loki, not this timeline's Loki, is gonna come back to the MCU. I mean, they'd be
ludicrous to get Loki. He's one of their most popular characters, and he'll probably show up either in the new Thor movie or the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
I'm
also very excited for the new Thor movie. It looks really good.
Who's directing it? This is the conversation we can have off podcast.
It's Taika Waititi.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yeah. No, I think this is interesting. I mean, we ended on the MCU, and like I'm going to call the whole episode MCU, so we might as well have talked about it for a bit at the end. Otherwise, it's just a throwaway reference to put on the title. But regardless, how do you want to sign off?
I get to make that decision?
I allow each guest to have their own sign off. Jules says, go read a book.
Go listen to the Worldwide Workshop.
Wow, I can't believe you'd plug your own shit in the sign-off of my podcast. Thank you very much, okay?
Listen, it's my sign-off now. I've declared it. We have to cross-promote, or none of them are going to get anywhere.